Have you ever wondered why, despite all your efforts, peace still feels like a distant shore? Why, even when you have everything you once prayed for, a quiet unrest still murmurs inside you? The Stoics asked the same question 2,000 years ago, and they found an answer strong enough to survive centuries. Today, in the whirlwind of deadlines, endless notifications, and an anxious chase for meaning, their answer matters more than ever. Imagine waking up each day already armed for whatever the world hurls at you. Not because you control the world, but because you control your response to it. This is not wishful thinking. This is the Stoic way. Epictetus, once a slave, once a man with no control over his own body, taught that true freedom begins where your inner world detaches from outer chaos. He could be beaten, sold, insulted, but no one could force him to feel anger or despair unless he allowed it. What if you carried that armor into your day? When the subway breaks down. When your boss lashes out unfairly. When someone you love says words that cut deep. The philosophy of the Stoics is not a fragile thing meant for ideal circumstances. It was forged for times exactly like these, chaotic, unjust, uncertain. At the heart of Stoicism lies a brutal but liberating truth: there are things within your power, and things beyond it. Your actions, your judgments, your character, these are yours. Everything else, your reputation, your health, the economy, the approval of others, floats outside your grasp. We waste so much life clutching at what was never ours to hold. The Stoics whisper, focus only on your side of the line. You will find, not weakness, but an unstoppable kind of strength. Seneca, another giant among the Stoics, once wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. How many hours have you wasted worrying about disasters that never came? How many nights have you played scenes of rejection, of loss, of humiliation, all inside your mind, like bad theater rehearsals for tragedies that never opened? The Stoic path invites you to step off that stage. To see that the future, by definition, is out of your hands. That suffering for a future that does not yet exist is not bravery. It is self-inflicted torment. Now imagine this instead: each morning, you remind yourself that you control only your efforts, not their results. You greet success with gratitude but no addiction. You meet failure with calm, not collapse. When insults come, you smile, knowing that you were never owed approval in the first place. When hardship comes, you do not curse your fate, you lean into it, knowing that hardship is the raw material of greatness. Like fire feeding on whatever falls into it, you become stronger for it, not weaker. This is not to say the Stoics teach indifference. No, they teach deep, burning engagement with life, but on terms that cannot be broken by fortune's cruelty. You love, but you know that those you love are mortal. You work, but you know that careers rise and fall like waves. You dream, but your happiness does not hang on whether the dream comes true. You hold everything with open hands, not clenched fists. Can you see what freedom that gives? The freedom to act boldly without fear of losing. The freedom to love deeply without fear of heartbreak. The freedom to live fully without fear of death. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, perhaps the most powerful man of his time, knew that his titles and armies meant nothing against the forces of nature and fate. In the dark hours of his own heart, he wrote reminders to himself, not to others, but to himself, that he was dust, a whisper, a flicker in an endless flow of time. That the opinions of men, the glories of empires, even the body he lived in, all of it was transient. What remained, what truly mattered, was whether he lived with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. Think about that. A man who ruled the world understood he ruled almost nothing at all, except his own mind. And that was enough for him. Would it not be enough for us? We live today in a world the Stoics could hardly imagine, and yet every human heart still beats with the same fears, the same hopes, the same wounds. Technology has changed. Traffic has changed. Politics have changed. But the way suffering is born inside the mind, that remains the same. And so, too, the cure remains the same. The Stoic cure is not magic. It does not promise to erase pain. It promises to build inside you a foundation so steady that when pain comes, and it will, you will not collapse. You will feel it. You will acknowledge it. And you will endure it with dignity. And then, you will move forward. Because the Stoic does not seek a painless life. The Stoic seeks an invincible life. A life in which you are not a slave to every twist of fortune, every loss, every slight. A life where your peace is yours, untouchable. A life where you meet the morning not with dread, but with readiness, saying, "Today I will encounter selfishness, injustice, anger. Today I will meet it with patience, wisdom, kindness, and courage. And no matter what happens, I will be the master of myself." Wouldn't that be a life worth living? Wouldn't that be a life worth fighting for? So how do you begin? How do you bring Stoicism down from the lofty pages of ancient books into the heat and dust of your everyday life? It starts with one decision: to take responsibility for your inner world. Not for the world itself, not for the traffic, not for your partner's moods, not for the stock market, not even for your past. But for your thoughts. For your choices. For your character. That is your kingdom. And it is enough. Look around. Most people are waiting. Waiting for someone to save them. Waiting for the weekend, for the next promotion, for a better partner, for the world to calm down, for everything to finally be okay, and only then, they think, they'll find peace. But the Stoics would tell you, don't wait. Don't trade your peace for a tomorrow that may never come. The only time you ever have is now. Use it. Seneca once said, "While we wait for life, life passes." How often do you tell yourself, "I'll start when things settle down"? But life never settles. It moves like a river, unpredictable, sometimes violent. You can't dam it. You can't freeze it. You can only learn to stand firm in the current. The Stoic trains for this, the way a warrior trains for battle. Not with swords, but with clarity. Not to destroy others, but to guard his peace. Every day is practice. Every encounter is a chance to sharpen your virtue, your courage, your patience, your justice, your self-restraint. But here's the truth: Stoicism is not easy. It's not warm and fuzzy. It demands discipline. It will ask you to say no when it's easier to say yes. To walk away when it's tempting to cling. To remain silent when you are burning to lash out. It doesn't care how you feel in the moment. It cares who you are becoming in the long run. Think of the times you've lost your temper. Said things you regret. Acted out of fear. Let your insecurities speak louder than your values. Now think of how it felt afterward. That weight in your chest, not from what others did to you, but from what you allowed yourself to become. The Stoics call you back to center. They don't shame your emotions. They don't deny your pain. But they ask you, what will you do with it? Will you let it rule you? Or will you use it to grow? They remind you that you are not your feelings. You are the one who observes them, chooses a response, and builds a life on that response. And so, every moment becomes a fork in the road. Will you go the way of impulse, or the way of principle? Stoicism is not a retreat from life. It's a way to face it fully awake. When people hurt you, and they will, the Stoic doesn't collapse into resentment. He sees the hurt clearly, accepts that others are flawed just as he is, and refuses to surrender his peace to their chaos. He acts, yes, but not from vengeance. From clarity. When life turns suddenly, a job lost, a diagnosis given, a relationship ending, the Stoic feels it, but does not drown in it. He knows that the universe owes him nothing. He expects nothing, and so he is free to meet each change not as a victim, but as a student. He asks, what is this moment here to teach me? And how can I answer it as a better man, a better woman, a better soul? You don't need to live in ancient Rome to live like a Stoic. You don't need to wear robes or write meditations in Latin. You need only to begin, wherever you are, with whatever life you've been given, and choose to meet it with integrity. And if you fall short, because you will, you begin again. That's what Marcus Aurelius did. That's what Seneca did. That's what Epictetus taught. Not perfection, but practice. Not immunity to pain, but mastery over your response to it. The world will always test you. And the world is very good at finding your weaknesses. It will press your pride. It will poke at your fears. It will whisper that you are not enough, unless you prove yourself in some way. Unless you win. Unless you impress. Unless you achieve. Unless you own more. But the Stoic knows the truth: the only person you need to impress is the one inside your own chest. And the only kind of success that matters is to live in agreement with reason, with virtue, with your highest self. So when the world says, be angry, the Stoic says, be still. When the world says, chase pleasure, the Stoic says, chase purpose. When the world says, you are falling behind, the Stoic answers, I am exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what is in my power. This is not detachment. This is not coldness. This is power. Power not to dominate others, but to govern yourself. And here's the paradox, when you live like that, when you stop needing, begging, grasping, people feel it. And they are drawn to it. Because in a world of noise, stillness speaks loudest. In a world addicted to distraction, presence is revolutionary. In a world that wants you small, your calm becomes your protest. You don't need to escape life to find peace. You need to show up for it, every single day, with both feet on the ground, and a mind that's unshakable. That's Stoicism. And it can be yours. Right now. If you choose. Now let's talk about fear. Because that's what drives most of our suffering, isn't it? Not pain itself, but fear of pain. Not failure, but fear of failing. Not death, but the fear of dying before we've lived. Fear is the shadow following every thought about the future. It disguises itself well, as overplanning, as caution, as ambition. But underneath it all, there's usually one trembling voice. What if I lose what I have? What if I never get what I want? The Stoics cut straight through that fog. They didn't pretend life was safe. They didn't tell you it would all work out. They told you something harder. Something more powerful. They told you, you will lose everything. You will lose your youth, your health, your loved ones, your reputation, your possessions. Eventually, your own heartbeat. This is not pessimism. This is preparation. And what comes after that brutal clarity is something you might not expect, peace. Because when you no longer need guarantees, you begin to live. When you stop expecting fairness from the world, you become unbreakable. You stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? Epictetus said, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather, wish that everything happens as it actually will, and your life will flow well. That sounds insane, doesn't it? Wish for what happens. Even the heartbreaks? The betrayals? The illnesses? Yes. Not because they are good in themselves, but because they are real. And reality is always a better ally than fantasy. The Stoic accepts life on its terms, not on his. That doesn't mean he becomes passive. On the contrary, he becomes precise. He stops wasting energy resisting the unavoidable. He invests his strength only where it counts. You want to make an impact? Begin by controlling the only thing you truly possess, your character. Your judgment. Your voice. The way you walk into a room. The tone in your silence. The patience in your anger. The mercy in your justice. The Stoics believed in shaping a self so firm, so rooted, that no external power could shake it. A man or woman who cannot be bribed by pleasure or broken by pain. Who walks into every room as a student of life, not a slave to it. In our time, that person is rare. Most people have forgotten that virtue is even a goal. They chase performance, applause, visibility. But the Stoic chases clarity. Simplicity. A clean soul. He does not ask how many followers he has. He asks, am I living in line with what I know to be right? That's all. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Because once you see clearly, you no longer have the luxury of blaming others. No longer can you say, he made me angry. No, he didn't. He acted. You chose how to respond. Maybe you didn't know you had a choice. But you do now. And that changes everything. This is the quiet revolution of Stoicism. It doesn't need banners. It doesn't need speeches. It just needs one person who refuses to surrender his dignity, no matter what the world does to him. We live in a time where outrage is a currency. Where victimhood can become an identity. The Stoic doesn't buy in. He listens. He understands. But he does not build his life around being wounded. He builds it around being whole. Because you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become, because of it, or in spite of it. So if your past is heavy, carry it with strength. If your present is painful, walk through it with grace. And if your future is uncertain, meet it with courage. You don't have to be fearless to be free. You just have to stop letting fear decide the shape of your life. Marcus Aurelius, in all his power, wrote these words to himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not to make you afraid, but to make you focused, aware, alive. Let it be the fire that wakes you up. You don't have time to waste on pettiness, on ego, on chasing things that shine today and rot tomorrow. Let your time be spent becoming something death itself cannot erase, a mind aligned with reason, a soul aligned with virtue. Because one day, this life will end. And when it does, will you be able to say, with calm in your voice, I lived as I should. I met what came. I was not perfect, but I was awake. That's the Stoic's goal. Not comfort. Not applause. But presence. Integrity. Freedom. And it is yours, if you are willing to claim it. So what does it look like, a life lived the Stoic way? It's not loud. It's not glamorous. It probably won't trend. But it will be solid. Centered. Real. It looks like a person who doesn't panic when plans fall apart. Who doesn't beg to be understood. Who doesn't need the world to bend in their favor to stand tall. It looks like someone who can lose, and not be broken. Win, and not be intoxicated. Who can be hated, and still not hate. It looks like a person who starts the day not asking, what will I get, but how will I show up? A person who sees others not as tools, not as threats, but as fellow souls, each struggling with their own fears and flaws. It looks like someone who is fully present, in conversations, in silence, in pain, in beauty. Not distracted. Not desperate. But alive. Aware. Anchored. And when that person lies down at night, there is a kind of peace in their chest that can't be bought. It doesn't come from having everything. It comes from knowing you are becoming someone you can respect. That is the power of Stoicism. It doesn't promise to fix the world. But it teaches you how to stand in it. Calm. Ready. Awake. It teaches you to stop wasting time chasing approval and start earning your own. It teaches you to stop fearing discomfort and start trusting your strength. It teaches you to stop asking for life to be easier, and start choosing to be wiser. This world doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more outrage, more speed, more chaos. It needs more people who know who they are. People who can meet insult with dignity. Who can lose without bitterness. Who can win without arrogance. Who can walk through fire and still remain gentle. That's who the Stoic becomes. Not cold. Not passive. But resilient. Disciplined. Fierce, not with others, but with themselves. And you can become that person. Not someday. Today. Start with this breath. This choice. This moment. This is your battlefield. This is your proving ground. This is your time. And when it ends, because it will, you will know you stood firm. You stayed true. You lived on your terms. With reason. With courage. With grace. You became what the world so rarely sees. A free human being.